Humphrey Meads, and it was the first time he came up to take me back to meet his people, which I already knew, but not to get to visit the home. It was a very, very heavy snowstorm, so he had to leave the car in Hyde's flat, and it rang, and I was to go and meet him to take me back to the Meads. And I walked, and the footmarks were there, and his footmarks were there, and we met up in the hill between just by the school, and we obviously had kissed because our feet came up quite close, and then we broke, and then the 2 feet went back like this. Well, the rest of the Belskis saw this, and I said that was never allowed to be forgotten. It was when Humphrey came, met Grace, kissed her, and took her back to his people.
Yeah, well, I was born in Rangiwahia, in the house up above the bridge, the Rangiwahia Bridge. On the other side of the river there was the Smiths and the Stents, and further up the valley was the Cairds. The O'Dwyers were way further up, and the Wars, and I remember the Knights coming down and starting school there after coming up from Hunterville. Anyhow, this bridge, I got into serious trouble once because I tried to climb on top of it, up the, I don't know what you'd call the part of it, but still it was very high. And of course when I got on top I didn't know how to get down. But I got into quite serious trouble there, and the seat of my pants was well and truly smacked, I think. Anyhow, the first teacher I had was Mr. French, and then there was a Miss Bennett, and then a Mrs. McCarthy, and also had Arch Martin, or Tom Martin as he's called. Anyhow, my father and my grandfather were partners there, and they farmed on the southern side of the river. Anyhow, after that, my grandfather and that retired and went to Havelock North, and my father, he bought a farm down in Rangiwahia, Steve Bailey's farm. So we went to settle there. But Sidney Stent and he always had a pack of terriers, and he and I, we traversed miles rabbiting. And I remember one night we landed late. We'd been up at Mrs. Herbie Thompson's eating some sandwiches and what have you, and it was dark, and I can remember them calling out for us, wondering where the devil we'd got to. And
what about Uncle Frank and the Smokes?
Uncle Frank
Belsky.
Uncle Frank Belsky, he lived, there was a Mrs. Templey lived at the corner by the school, and then Frank Belsky took it over. And he was a bit of a rascal. He taught me how to smoke. And but he could make a great pancake for hungry boys, and we used to go there now and again.
And you saw the school teacher?
I saw there was a difference between one family and the school teacher. And of course the school teacher rode to school, and my greatest memory was hearing the thunder of hooves and across this bridge, and here was the teacher crouching now low over the main, going like McGinty or one of those, and this a neighbour wielding a stock whip with just a chain behind her. Anyhow, I'll never forget that, because the old bridge did kick up. It finished up in a court case, I think, and that was all right. Then I can remember the old woolshed dances, and I can remember being put down in a catching pen on a bit of a mattress and told to go to sleep, and we did too. And then I can remember getting taken by the hand, and it'd be nearly daylight, going back home, and you could hear the Kowatow boys, the wild boars and others, thunder over the bridge, and I dare say they went home and just changed and went straight to work by the time they got home. But those old woolshed dances were great. One of the women I admired very much was Mrs. Jack Caird, and she taught us Sunday school. I went to Sunday school there. She was a fine woman. And Mrs. Waugh also taught us Sunday school. There were there was a Mrs. Freeman up there too, where I think Doug Thompson farmed. They lived up there for a while, on Neil Caird. After, as I say, my parents, they sold out, and we came out to Rangiwahia, and I can always remember my father talking of concerts they even had in Rangiwahia, of how the local talent would sing and perform, but the audiences were rather hard. And I can remember him telling us about some person starting to sing, "Darling, I am growing old," and a voice boomed out from the back, "and darned ugly too." And of course that broke the hall up, the audience up. And another time some man was singing the old song, the veteran song, "Wheel my chair to the window," and a voice yelled out, "and throw him out." And those were the sort of things, and all of a sudden there'd be a yell, "There's a fight," and the hall would half empty out, and they'd
Just as bad
stand and watch. But they were bushwhackers, fencers and roadmen, and they'd all come in for these concerts. But the days in Kariwiri were they were my first childhood days, and well, we had quite a happy life.